Chapter 12: The Moon and Artificial Satellites. Get into. Draw the different shapes of the moon in the given circles to show its phases. The moon is our closest neighbor in space. The distance of the moon from the earth is about 384,400 kilometers. It is Earth's only natural satellite. A satellite is an object that revolves around a planet. It looks very bright because it reflects the light of the sun. Natural satellites. The age of the moon is about 9,500 million years, same as that of the earth. It is a big ball of grey rock, about one-fourth the size of the earth. Surface of the moon. The surface of the moon has hills, mountains, valleys, and craters. Craters are scattered all over its surface. The dark spots that we see on the moon show the presence of these craters. The moon's surface is covered with dark gray dust. There is no water on its surface. Atmospheric conditions of the moon. Life does not exist on the moon due to the absence of air and water. As there is no air on the moon, so sound cannot be heard there. The temperature of the moon also changes very quickly. It changes with day and night. The part of the moon which is illuminated by the sun is very hot, while the darker side is very cold. Gravity on the moon. The force of gravity can also be felt on the moon, but the gravity of the moon is only one-sixth that of the earth. This means that we can jump higher on the moon than on the earth. So if one's weight is 42 kgs on the earth, then his weight on the moon will be 7 kgs only. Find and answer what is the difference in weight on the moon as compared to it on the earth. Phases of the moon. The revolution of the moon around the earth illuminates different portions of the moon by the sun. So the moon appears to change its shape in the sky. These changing shapes of the moon that we see are called phases of the moon. The phases of the moon depend on its position in relation to the sun and the earth. Day 1. In this state, the side of the moon facing the earth is away from the sun. It gets no sunlight and therefore we are unable to see it from the earth. The moon in this position is called the new moon. Day 3. In this state, the small part of the moon's side facing the earth gets sunlight. Therefore, we see a thin part of the moon. The moon in this position is called the crescent moon. Day 7. In this state, only half part of the moon can be seen. The moon in this position is called the half moon. Day 10. In this state, only three-quarters of the moon can be seen. The moon in this position is called the gibbous moon. Day 14. In this state, the whole side of the moon facing the earth receives the sunlight. Therefore, we see a complete round moon. The moon in this position is called the full moon. All the above stages together are known as waxing phases of the moon. After this, the cycle reverses and the size of illuminated facing side of the moon starts reducing. These stages are collectively referred to as waning phases of the moon. Movements of the moon. The moon spins on its own axis while it orbits the earth. It takes 27 days, 7 hours, and 43 minutes to complete its rotation and almost the same time for revolution. Due to this, only one side of the moon is visible from the earth. Tides. Tides are periodic rise and fall of water in large bodies of water caused by the gravity of the moon and the sun. When the water level rises, it is called high tide, and when the water level falls, it's called low tide. Each day there are two high tides and two low tides. It takes about 6 hours for the rising water to reach high tide. It takes another 6 hours for the falling water to reach low tide. The sun, the moon, and the earth are in one line during a full moon or a new moon. Their combined gravity causes higher high tide than normal high tide on these days. Low tide, high tide. Infomine. Fishermen need to keep a track of the tides as it can be dangerous to go fishing during high tide. Artificial satellites. The moon is a natural satellite of the Earth. Artificial satellites are man made objects which revolve around the Earth just as the moon revolves around the Earth. They are sent to space for performing different tasks. Most satellites are launched into space by rockets. Artificial satellites are designed to carry out scientific experiments. Some types of artificial satellites are as follows: communication satellites. They are used to transmit radio, telephone, and television signals across the Earth. They also help in sending messages through fax machines, using mobile phones, internet, and even in the navigation of ships, spacecrafts, and aircrafts. Weather satellites. They take pictures of clouds, storms, and ocean currents and send the information. This information is used to predict the weather and warn people about approaching natural disasters like cyclones, floods, and hurricanes. Scientific satellites. They send information about space. Astronomers study this data and learn more about the space and celestial bodies. Mangalyaan and Chandrayaan 1 and 2 are some examples of scientific satellites. Find and answer. What was India's first satellite? Eclipses. The sun is a source of light, while the earth and moon are opaque objects made of solid rocks. When the earth or the moon comes in the way of the sun's light, they block the light and cast a shadow. This event causes an eclipse. Eclipses are categorized into two types: solar eclipse and lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse occurs on a full moon night when the earth comes between the sun and the moon. When the sun, earth, and the moon are in a straight line, the earth blocks the light of the sun from reaching the moon, and the earth casts a shadow on the moon. This is called a lunar eclipse. The word lunar means moon. When the earth's shadow completely covers the moon, it is called a total lunar eclipse. When it covers the moon partially, it is called a partial lunar eclipse. Solar eclipse. A solar eclipse occurs when the moon comes in between the earth and the sun. When the sun, moon, and earth are in a straight line, the moon blocks out the sunlight from reaching the earth and casts a shadow on the earth. This is called a solar eclipse. Like lunar eclipse, it can also be total or partial. When the moon completely hides the sun, it is called a total solar eclipse. When it hides the sun partially, it is called a partial solar eclipse. Pull up your sleeves. To observe how a solar eclipse occurs, take a football, Earth, a tennis ball, Moon, and a torch, Sun, or lamp. Place the lamp on a table. Keep the tennis ball between the lamp and the football. Move the tennis ball till it comes in a position that casts a shadow on the football. This is how a lunar eclipse occurs. Infomine. During the solar eclipse, sometimes almost the entire surface of the sun gets blocked by the shadow of the moon. Only a bright ring around it remains to be seen and is called an annular or a diamond ring. Up for review. Circle the correct answer. Number 1. The solar lunar eclipse occurs on a full moon night. Number 2. The sun's, moon's gravity is one-sixth that of the earth. Number 3. Communication, scientific. Satellite helps sending messages through the internet. Number 4. The solar, lunar eclipse occurs when the moon comes between the sun and the earth. Take a look. Moon. Phases: new moon, crescent moon, half moon, gibbous moon, full moon. Satellites: natural satellite, moon. Artificial satellites, communication satellites, weather satellites, scientific satellites. Eclipses: solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. Tides: high tide, low tide.